In terms of the redevelopment funds, with the reserve of $100,000, this year we had a takeaway by the legislature of $158,000, and I don't think it's any secret that the legislature probably is looking at further takeaways in terms of that. With that $158,000 takeaway, we do have the $100,000 at this point.
Yes, we do. And if you this council may recall, in October, we presented a long-term fiscal plan for the redevelopment agency, and I believe it did show approximately $100,000 reserve level. If we are going to plan for, in this year's budget, that the state may take away the same amount of money, then I think we ought to plan on reducing expenditures considerably in order to balance that. To date, the reserve fund that we had for our bond issue, we have not been required to put that up. It's still in a case of the bankruptcy with Lehman Brothers has not been settled, and so far we've not been asked to do that, but we're keeping this money in reserve, so we actually have more than $100,000.
Right, but any day, $300,000 of that could go away as a result of that.
Exactly.
That
Exactly. The council gave myself and the city manager the authority to act quickly when that comes up. One thing I need to also point out is the definition of the general fund reserve. I want to be very precise so there's no misunderstanding. This is the definition that has been used in all of our budgets that I've seen in the last couple of years. And the reserve is the undesignated fund balance in fund number 100, which is the general fund. You can refer to that as the general purpose fund. But the general fund, from an accounting sense, is actually composed of a number of other funds, such as the equipment replacement fund, the council discretionary fund, the council contingency fund, and so forth. So one other fund which is identified as Fund 101, and it doesn't appear in our budget because it only accounts for the general fund contingency reserve. So you have to add those two together to get the balance as of June 30th.
Okay. Any questions of Ms. Sada?
So you're saying then that we don't have to put the equipment reserve in this definition?
No.
Because it's already included in the general fund?
No. I'm saying that this policy, when we talk about general fund for the purposes we're using here, we're only considering the general purpose fund and the council contingency fund, which together, when you add the balance of the council contingency fund, that's the only thing that's in that fund, to the undesignated reserve, you will get the fund balance of the general fund. The other ones...
Okay, so that's included in the general fund, that's what I'm saying. In the
no, it's not. They're separate.
Then why wouldn't you put that in the definition?
Because those are separate reserve funds that are set aside by the council for specific purposes, and the council has decided by policy to segregate those portions of fund balance into separate funds.
I understand they're segregated, but you just told me that you have to add that in to get the general fund reserve balance.
No, if I could just clarify a couple things, just the equipment replacement fund is a separate fund. It's totally 100% in reserve, if you want to call it that.
I'm not talking about that fund.
Okay. The only funds that we're combining are 100 and 101, are the two? Okay, it's not the council contingency fund. It's an accounting fund that's been set up in accounting. But the two numbers are exactly the number that we show when you show the general fund, okay?
So the council contingency fund is available
102.
money?
That's not part of this reserve. It's not part of this total that we're talking about.
I'm not sure
right. So it's
that
not
fund
part of the
exists
5% or the 15. It is just like the equipment replacement. That's another set of funds.
No, I think we're getting confused here. When we talk about the general fund, there's about 5 or 6 sub-funds that, from an accounting purpose, make up the general fund. However, Fund 100, which is the general fund which we talk about and we budget everything, and the fund balance of Fund 101, which is the council contingency fund, are added together for the purposes of determining the fund balance, the reserve of the city that we're talking about here. We have another fund, we have other funds that are part of the general fund for accounting purposes, but are treated separately, like Nancy says. The equipment replacement fund, the council discretionary fund, sometimes we call that the same thing as the contingency. I've heard people confuse the contingency and the discretionary.
If my memory serves me correctly, when that, and this was before I got on council, the council contingency fund was monies received through point of sale for a particular company that was doing business here in town.
KDI.
No, I think that's where the confusion is. It's been called the same name as Fund 101. It's called Fund 102, and it's the council discretionary
Okay,
fund.
the
But it has been misnamed several times
Okay.
and called the council contingency fund, but it's really the council discretionary fund.
Now, my understanding is that that fund, because that business is no longer here,
We're gonna spend out the rest of that money shortly.
okay, so that fund, that 102 then, once that is balanced down to zero, will no longer exist.
No, that's, it will no
It'll
longer,
just be,
yes. that
it'll
will
be a
no
line
longer
item
exist.
with zero in it.
Exactly. So the only thing that makes up the general fund reserve is the fund balance of Fund 101, the council contingency fund, and 100, which is general fund, which has all the expenditures for all the departments. The only thing in the contingency fund is that reserve balance.
And maybe to clarify, what funds go into that council, into 101?
No funds. That is a fund of itself, and the only thing in there is the cash.
But where did that money come from?
That is our reserve, that's part of our reserve. The other part of our reserve is what's left over from the
Okay.
previous year.
All right.
So when you add those two together,
And that makes our reserve fund of between, or whatever, 12%, 13%.
Exactly.
Which then becomes the ending fund balance for June 30th.
right.
Okay.
I apologize, but it has always been a little bit confusing. Even if you read the budget, the way it's been done in previous years, it has always not been really clear that those two
And
funds
I
added
think,
together.
and that's something that I think we need to do, is we need to have clear, we need to have clear definitions of what each one of those funds are, so that, A, we're not commingling or using a definition for a particular fund, which is in essence a different fund. So if we can work on that this year, that would be great.
And that's what I'm trying to do tonight. That's why I made a point of trying to explain that those two funds added together constitute the general fund reserve.
Jack, would it be, and Sandra, would it be permissible to kind of put this like, the 101 is our savings account and the 100 is the checking account?
Yes,
Put it in
exactly.
this
That is
simple,
a very good
everyday,
analogy.
ordinary person funds?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it is. At the end of the year, you've got so much left over that you haven't spent in your checking account, and then you got your savings account. You add them together, that's how much money you have for the next year
Okay, good.
In reserve.
Yes,
in reserve.
that's clarification. Mr. Turmel?